Good evening. Welcome to the August 1st Northampton County Council meeting. Mr. Kapora, will you lead us in the pledge, please? Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Could we please have a moment of silence? Thank you. Ms. Negron, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Kapora?
Here.
Mr. Giovanni?
Here.
Mr. Gaffredo?
Here.
Mr. Heckman?
Here.
Ms. Keegan?
Here.
Mr. Kraft? Ms. Vargo Hefner?
Here.
Mr. Warren?
Here.
All are present.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of July 18th, 2024?
So moved.
Motion to approve by acclamation.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you. Next, we have courtesy of the floor. Only one person has signed in. Tara Zirinsky, 5 minutes.
So thank you for allowing me to address the council on the subject of the proposed changes to Article 13 of the Administrative Code, Bill number 870. As the controller, it is my duty as the fiscal watchdog for the county to alert County Council, 1, of the potential for actual or apparent fraud, and 2, other unintended consequences that may have any adverse impact on county operations and the public good. One of the responsibilities of the County Controller's Office, as per Article 13, Section 1309D, RFP opening of the Administrative Code, is to witness the opening of the proposals that are received in response to RFPs. Our role, as we understand it, is to make sure that all proposals that have been received are opened in a timely manner, include all the required elements, and are properly recorded as having been received. The bill that has been proposed seeks to change Section 1309E of the Administrative Code relating to evaluation committees. First, the resolution proposes changing may to shall in Section 1309E. As currently written, the procurement officer may form an evaluation committee. Using the word shall would mean an evaluation committee would need to be formed every single time an RFP is published and proposals are received. Our procurement officer is an expert in procurement. This is his job, and his charge is to solicit bids and evaluate proposals. Further, under the Administrative Code, Section 1303, Procurement Authority, the actual procurement authority falls to the county executive, subject to the council's approval when required under the code. Requiring the procurement officer to form an evaluation committee for every single RFP may cause unnecessary delays in the process, intrudes on the authority of the county executive, and there are good reasons this county adopted a home rule charter with a strong executive, and may provide more space for outside pressure and interventions in the process as more fully described below. None of these outcomes seem in the best interest of an efficient county operation and ultimately the citizens of Northampton County. Second, the resolution proposes that the procurement officer be required to notify county council of the formation of the evaluation committee, and that the chair of council have the opportunity to appoint up to 3 council members to any such committee. Currently, any such committee is to consist of users and experts, a single county council member, and a procurement officer. The resolution does not require that up to 3 members of the council have any particular knowledge or expertise with regard to the subject matter of the RFP. This creates the potential for multiple council members without such knowledge or expertise to make decisions regarding whether or which proposals are accepted. Again, this does not appear to be in the best interest of the county residents or taxpayers. Third, and perhaps the most important, The presence of multiple council members as members of the committee could also be seen as injecting political or inappropriate considerations into the vendor selection process. For example, and I say this without intending to cast doubt on the integrity of any of the current council members, multiple council members on an evaluation committee could potentially be in the position to steer county business to political supporters or donors. Participation of one or more council members on an evaluation committee for all RFPs may also trigger additional conflicts of interest and other ethical considerations subject to Article 17 of the Administrative Code.
1 minute.
The proposed resolution effectively removes the wall between the final approving body, yourselves, for any contract subject to Section 1315C of the Administrative Code, and the evaluation and selection process. Your role is to check those powers, and being so substantially involved in the procurement process dangerously blurs those lines. I believe that what you are looking for is more transparency, but in our opinion, the proposed resolution has substantial other negative impacts that go much beyond that. As a previous member of council, I've witnessed and participated in the discussion of bids and understand the council's need to know who the bidders are, how many bidders there were, and what details of the process might impact their approvals. I do not think council needs to be present to micromanage the entire process or change this portion of the administrative code to inform procurement of their selection. Council is not supposed to be involved in the selection process for a reason, because, again, council is to provide the checks and balances to the process, and therefore should not be a substantial part of it. Our office has been looking at Article 13 and has an interest in auditing it, how well the current process has or has not worked. In my previous discussion with Anthony Sabino, the prior audit manager for the Controller's Office, we have discussed auditing Article 13 to evaluate its effectiveness and to provide recommendations for potential modifications that would help update the process, create more transparency, and potentially add mechanisms which would trigger rejection of council by way of an objective process. I have two suggestions that I've outlined here. The Controller's Office would like to ask you to table the ordinance to an audit for the Controller's Office, subject to the cooperation of all concerned, to be delivered in a timely manner, or consider adding the Controller's Office, who already witnesses bids to the evaluation committee that may be formed by the procurement officer, and we believe our participation in the process in a non-voting capacity would enhance the credibility of the process, as we would be participating in our role as the fiscal watchdog for the county, independent from both council and the executive, whose sole responsibility is to protect public funds. For all these reasons outlined above, if you elect to move forward in voting on this resolution, our current recommendation would be for you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to courtesy of the floor this evening? Thank you. Mr. McClure, do you have a report?
I'm really going to miss the decency and integrity of Rich Johnston as the sheriff of the county of Northampton, but I have asked, and he has agreed to act as interim sheriff, and that is Chief Deputy Sheriff Christopher Ziegler. And if I could just for a minute introduce him to you again. Chief Deputy Christopher Ziegler has served in the security law enforcement field for approximately 32 years. He is currently at the rank of Chief Deputy with the Northampton County Sheriff's Department, where he is second in command under the sheriff. Prior to his promotion to Chief Deputy, he served as Lieutenant in charge of Protective Services Division. During his career, he has been in charge of the crisis negotiating team and has planned high-profile trials for various court levels. He has a bachelor's degree from Muhlenberg and is a graduate of the Pennsylvania Deputy Sheriff's Academy. Chief Deputy Ziegler has received certification and training from various schools provided by the U.S. Marshals Service, the FBI, and other state and local agencies. We're really fortunate that Chief Ziegler has agreed to fill this role of acting sheriff while we look forward to the future. And are there any questions for either myself or Chief Ziegler about that? Because of the unique nature of our charter and how we select a sheriff in Northampton County, I did consult with President Judge Daly, who concurred in the appointment of Chief Ziegler to acting sheriff. So today, because we are so concerned about making sure our elections continue to be legal, fair, and accurate, and above reproach, we had our first meeting at a senior center with seniors. Chris Camini led a demonstration on some of the various aspects of the voting processes for the seniors that were there. But we also had visitors from the Pennsylvania Department of State who came to witness Chris's presentation at the senior center at Oliver Border House in Nazareth. And then they came here. Representatives from the Pennsylvania Department of State, Mr. Michael McDonald, and his associate, Ms. Danny Bendeski, came to the courthouse to see the various operations and we explained to them how our operations will take place on Election Day. They were impressed, but they did have some recommendations for us how to move our elections forward in a more safe and secure manner, and we were very grateful that they spent the time they spent with us here today. Finally, I did not know that the controller was going to make this presentation tonight. I haven't had an opportunity to read it. What I did hear and was able to comprehend, I would say that I largely agree with her assessment, but I have a sort of different question as I contemplate whether I'm going to veto this ordinance or not. There's a lot of questions that are open in the ordinance itself. Are there particular kinds of procurement processes that council would like to be involved in with respect to the mandatory formation of committees? Would we, since the formation of committees, if I read the ordinance correctly, is mandatory, would it be for everything we procure? Would that extend to the chocolate milk at Graysdale? I'm using some of these examples to be illustrative, not to be not to try and be a wise guy. So what are we envisioning there? And really, what is the reason for it? What have been the difficulties in procurement other than the things we've talked a lot about, which were the pay study and the Graysdale analysis? What were problems in procurement that an expanded committee system with more council members is meant to address, other than the attempt of the council, which is not a commission, it's a council, in an attempt to involve itself in what are essentially and necessarily under the charter administrative functions. So what is the impetus for this? I'd be interested as I attempt to evaluate whether to veto an ordinance if it's passed, because it's not a certainty. If someone can articulate to me other than we think we need more power in the process, then that's an answer, right? That's an answer in and of itself. We just want more power. But I'd like to know what specifically the problems in procurement have been that you can identify that would lead me to evaluate whether we should do this or not. And of course, there are a whole the ordinance is incredibly vague. We don't know what to do, when to form the committees, how to invite people. Our folks work 8:30 to 4:30. That's when the meetings will be. Lots of you folks work. Some of you are retired. Some of you have summers off, but then go back to work in September. I mean, who's going to serve on these committees? Those kinds of things are important to know. Okay, that's all I have.
I'm just not sure if it's the appropriate time to speak or once it's actually been officially introduced, because I was actually going to ask a question. Have there been any major issues or snafus with procurement that I don't know about over the course of the past 7 months that I've been here? It's only been 7 months that I've been on this council, I haven't seen any issues, quite frankly, for us to go down this road with, and how it may affect governance in the future. That was my question for the introduction of this.
I would entertain that during the time that we
Okay.
actually, I would entertain.
Okay, I didn't know
all
if we were
council
having a
questions
discussion
at
now.
that time. Yeah, it's part of
Thank
the
you, Madam
process.
President.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, it's not my ordinance, but we have a time and we do it and council discusses it. And
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Anything else?
Any other,
Nope, I'm good.
any other questions for Mr. McClure on any other matters?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have the public hearing of an ordinance entitled, "An Ordinance Amending Northampton County Administrative Code, Article 13, Section 1309, Competitive Negotiations." I'm looking for my notes. I do have a proposed amendment to consider before we consider the resolution, or the ordinance. This was brought up before council and introduced. It was also discussed at governance. My point in introducing it at the time was not, and I believe I said this last time when I spoke, not to sit on every single issue every single time. And no, not to vet your chocolate milk issues. We're not interested in that. But one council member did state at the governance committee, when I said maybe should we limit the scope, that there might be something, even though it's a smaller scope, that a council member has interest in. So the amendment that I propose, and I believe you all have it in front of you, is the evaluation committee under Section E. Procurement officer shall form a committee of users and experts to assist in the evaluation of proposal responses. Upon such committee being formed, the procurement officer shall extend an offer to include up to 3 members of county council to sit on the committee during the entire evaluation process. The council president shall determine the members and shall inform the procurement officer of their selection. The point of that being, if nobody expresses interest, if it's not germane to council, then we can respectfully refuse to participate. If it's something that's a larger scale and council members want to be participating, then we could have up to 3. There's been a question asked about, are there problems or have there been? To some extent, yes, and I think different people on council could speak to their own. My concern is that when the current procurement officer has sent notices to me to say, we have these committees coming up, would a council member like to be present, as is articulated in the current administrative code? I received a letter stating, if we choose to conduct a committee and do not communicate directly with the procurement officer. So I found that to be incredibly dismissive and rude, and if council is supposed to be allowed to have at least one person present, then we should be, and it should be our right to pass or participate. If anybody else has any questions or concerns, I'll listen to those, but I'm going to propose this amendment, because I think that clarifies it. And I think it speaks to the spirit of, if something is important to someone, and they do, and the other thing I'll say about subject matter and expertise is, there are plenty of people who come to this council, and especially this council sitting here, the past years that I've served, that people have unique experiences that they do bring to this table, and I think it's not all of the same kind, and I think that they would be beneficial to sit on some of those committees. So again, not everything, we don't need to vet every pencil, this is not a power grab, but if we are to be included, and if one branch of the administration could just say, well, we're just not going to call a committee and we're going to do what we want, then council has the right to be part of that process as well. So I'd like to make a motion to add this amendment. Would anybody second that motion?
Second.
I don't even understand the amendment you just said.
Do you have a copy of it?
Where is it? Here?
It should be a memo from Aileen and Chris with the wording.
Which one is it? Can I ask a question of Mr. Kraft? Go ahead. Studying it. As I said, it's
This is on the amendment, right?
on the amendment, yes,
Yes.
on your amendment. Shall, okay, upon committee being formed. Up to, all right. Now, I guess my question would be, a couple questions. During the entire evaluation process, when would that begin? I mean, I'm curious, like, what would we consider the beginning of the evaluation process? During the entire evaluation process? I mean, is that when all the bids had to come in and the deadlines passed?
My understanding is with procurement, after the bids are opened
Okay, all right,
and
okay.
reviewed. I mean, that's what, like, when we've had to do
So
our
during the
own, that's when
reviewing.
it's been, yeah.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Again, we're not part of we're not part of asking, we're not part of the bidding, we're just part of reviewing the bids after the fact, that when they're open.
I'd like to, if we're going to vote on, I think, like the controller mentioned, I would believe personally, if you're going to do this, council, I could see council being on a committee if it's done, but I don't think we should, I think we should be there as observing if we're concerned. I mean, if we perceive a problem, we can convey that to the procurement office. I don't know if we need to get involved in the discussion. And that's, I'm just throwing out based on your amendment, if there should be more to it. I mean, I don't want to get into more because we're just talking about the amendment. So I see the amendment and I'm wondering if there are members on, could there be members that would be on that would not be in a participatory fashion and just get involved in the discussion, just for observation's sake? And I don't know, I'm just saying, would you consider, or should I wait and say that should be a separate amendment? What would you prefer?
I think there's an amendment on the table, and I'm not going to amend the amendment at this time.
All right, well, then I'll.
I mean, it's a discussion, and I
All right,
think, you
so
know,
that's all I have then.
because there's nothing in this amendment or in the original proposal that says council must vote or council must decide. It's asking that council members be present. And the way that it was originally written, if you look at the original writing, a member of council is asked to participate. So participation means looking, seeing,
Well,
observing.
if I may, Madam
I
President.
mean, have you sat on these before yourself?
I think I did with some of the grant stuff, but not procurement. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I guess the controller mentioned about political, and let's be honest, some of this is concern about political involvement. Council is a political body. The executive branch is a political body. You're not going to take politics out of government. You know, I mean, you know, if you think that, you should be selling ivory soap. But I mean, the fact of the matter is politics will play a part. So I guess, well, who does the procurement officer report to in the administration?
Finance director.
Director of Fiscal Affairs. So, I mean, one could project that possibly takes away a neutral standing by the procurement officer. I'm not saying it does. One could say that. I know one of the complaints was that we're not getting enough bids. We get one bid, and it was COVID. It was, they don't like to do that. And that's been a concern. That are we getting competitive bids, or are we just dumping some that we just don't want to use? So I'll support your amendment. I think there should be a cost limit on it. What we would sit on. I mean, we could be offered, but I think we've seen in the last X amount of years. I think when the charter was written, it was, I remember a couple of people that wrote it, just like the Constitution. Council was the power, because you had power to purse. But, you know, they didn't want all this power in one person's hands, just like our founding fathers hated the idea. They didn't know what we should do. We got to have somebody running this thing day to day. They were scared of an executive officer. So eventually they came up with a president. And, you know, they would run things. Well, that didn't always work out, so it got dysfunctional. But as we know, the president's power over years has grown and grown. And I think even with the county, the executive's power has grown and grown. And the home rule charter is, I mean, it really needs to be reviewed. And if we're not precise, my point is, if we're not precise, we have a lot of lawyers now who, you know, we're looking for holes. And I think if you don't use precise language, it's going to come back to haunt you. You've got to be very precise in what you want, because you'll just go into a whole phase of fighting back and forth, back and forth. Because even if it passes, and the executive will veto it, of course, then the choice is, do you want to go to court or not? And that's always something that you have to keep in the back of your mind. So I will support your amendment. I think overall, though, it could use some tweaking. You know, I'm not going to say whether I'm going to vote for the entire ordinance or not at this point. That's all I had, Madam President.
Thank you. And again, I'll state that, again, we discussed this at governance. I brought up that issue of dollar amount, and I haven't received any feedback specifically to suggest or from like, yes, we should make it a certain amount. It's not me, it's a council process, and I believe in that. And there's 9 people here, and if you say, well, it's got to be like X or above or nothing below this, I don't have a problem with that. It was about inclusion in the process and not elimination from the process, and that was my sole motive in introducing this. Is there anybody else who wants to discuss the amendment? Call for the vote on the amendment. And if you're looking at it's this sheet here, so it would strike what's written here.
Ms. Fargo Hefner,
Yes.
Mr. Gafredo,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Corpora,
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni,
Yes.
Mr. Heckman,
Yes.
Mrs. Keegan,
No.
Mr. Kraft. Mr. Warren.
No.
Passes with a vote of 5-3.
Next, we'll open the discussion on the amended ordinance. Yes, Ms. Keegan.
So I feel that voting for this is saying that the people who are doing these things are not doing a good job. And I feel like this is just an attempt to overreach. I agree with what you said, like, where are the problems? Why are we going to fix something that's not broke? And my other question is this evolving just because you got a rude answer from somebody that you wanted to participate in something and you felt that you got a rude answer? Like, I just can't support something that I don't see any problems with.
Anyone else?
Say something. I've been on several committees. We've been called, I wasn't on any with you, Mr. Brown, I don't think. But STOFA, we had a committee for finding out where to put the human service building in the county. And we did a study of everybody and where the population came from, and everybody could drive down and get there. It was 1R and 1D on the committee. John had asked us to be there, and we were part of it. Also, for building the human services building, because we were getting rid of the Militis, or not the Militis, we were getting rid of 2 buildings and consolidating everything into one. We had a committee for how that was going to be built. And he invited us to do it, and we did it, one from each party, to give our feedback for those committees. On many other committees, this system works fine. I don't know, whose harebrained idea this was, why we need this power grab. It was said, oh my God, so many times since I've been back, the executive is all this power, he's taking it all for himself. We're nobody. We command the purse strings. We make the vote. If we don't like something, it takes 5 people to say no. I don't see how the whole procurement committee, we shall be on everything. I don't understand why you're doing this. I feel that until you write something that actually makes sense, it doesn't have to be amended and amended and amended and amended by everybody's ideas, we should table this, rewrite it, and then bring it back. So I'm making a motion to table this for now, get it wired is something that makes sense to everybody, and then bring it back. So there's a motion to table this.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
No discussion, call for the vote.
Mr. Kraft?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Warren?
Yes.
Mr. Capora?
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni?
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo?
Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
Mrs. Keegan?
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. Is there any other old business to discuss? Next, we have new business, the consideration of district attorney's personnel request resolution. Mr. Giovanni, will you introduce?
It is hereby resolved by the Northampton County Council that the position of one full-time chief county detective, pay grade CE-3-4D, salary is $77,403, shall be created in the district attorney's office effective August 5th, 2024.
Is there any discussion on the matter? The DA is here. If we have any questions for him,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. District Attorney, I certainly, and I've mentioned this before, I certainly want to make sure that your office has the tools that it needs in order to prosecute crimes in this county. I want to give you all the tools that you need. I mentioned before to one of your colleagues, it was my hope to see some sort of plan of action in terms of what you may need in the future. Because I do, again, want to see your office be able to succeed in what it needs to do. But from a cost perspective, I do wonder if we are getting a little bit high in terms of the salaries. And while I believe we probably should be 9th or 10th in Northampton County from my throughout the Commonwealth in terms of salaries in a district attorney's office, I fear that we're escalating up the ladder in terms of salaries at this point. It's a concern that I have. Again, I want to make sure that you have the tools that are necessary for your office, of course. But with this starting off as a group 3, I'm wondering why we can't do group 1 or group 2, as I've been giving this thought over the past couple of weeks since you were before council before.
Well, I appreciate your interest in how I manage and supervise my office. But as we discussed, and I've heard the discussions before, you have the power of the purse, and you've spoken. Back in 2023, you set my budget, and I have to perform my duties and responsibilities consistent with my budget. Under the statute and under the Home Rule Charter, meaning the district attorney's statute, I have complete control over the management and supervision of my office, including hiring and firing decisions and compensating my staff. I need to perform my duties and responsibilities consistent with the monies that you have budgeted to me. And I do that, and I'm doing that in this case. And although you seem to be worried about whether or not I am going to apparently cost the taxpayers money that I don't have the authority to spend, I want to assure you that that's not an issue here.
I'm just looking down the road, Mr. District Attorney, not right now.
You're looking at
this
what?
point. Just down the road.
Well,
I know
down
that
the
this-
road, if I need more money, I have to come to you, and I know that.
Right.
And I promised that I would perform my duties and responsibilities consistent with my budget, and I submitted a budget for next year, the same exact budget. I didn't ask for $1 more. You've already approved that monies for Mr. Houck when he was there. He performed his duties and responsibilities, and I would argue that perhaps I'm performing them a bit different and hopefully a bit better with the same money, even though we're farther down the road now. It's another year, and oftentimes people come in and they have ideas, they want to spend money and do this. I don't want to spend any additional money than what you've already decided is appropriate. So when you ask me, give me a plan, my plan is, and I told council all along, I'm going to be coming back and I have to build my office and perform my duties and responsibilities efficiently, and I intend to continue to do that. So I'm not going to ask you to give me one more dollar. And if I do come, Mr. Warren, I think you have every right to say no. If I can't justify why I want to spend more money than my budget, I think you have every right to question me about that. But if I perform my duties and responsibilities consistent with what you have believed already is appropriate, I think I'm allowed to, under both the Home Rule Charter and the state statute, to do what I think is best to get my work done and to manage and supervise my people.
And I agree with you, Mr. Barata.
I mean, I don't have a problem sitting down. If you have a problem or you think there's a concern with how I'm performing my job, I'm happy to sit down with you and address all of your questions.
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with that.
I don't.
I'll be available anytime to you.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I don't have any problems with how you are doing your job as
Okay.
district attorney. I want to be clear about that.
Well, there are other salary issues with regard to the detectives, and I was hoping to bring all my detectives up to the same level within my budget, because I have open spots that I'm not going to fill, so they can be paid a competitive salary. I'm dealing with Lehigh County, Bucks County, and Montgomery County, who are hiring many detectives and paying them much more than what I can do. And Mr. Jones right now had other opportunities. He wanted to come to Northampton County and agreed to come to Northampton County for less money than he could have gotten in other jurisdictions because he wanted to stay home and he liked what we were doing. And I negotiated this salary to bring him in. I understand the issues with regard to the collective bargaining agreement. And I met with Mr. Miller, and Mr. Miller is the person who negotiates for the county with regard to this. And I do have a management position as far as my detectives, and I had the ability to bring him in as an exempt position, not part of the association. So he will be free from the entanglements of the collective bargaining association. And the county will then negotiate whatever they believe is appropriate, which they can do, with regard to compensating the rest of the detectives. And I'm fine with that, and that's none of my business, and I have to stay out of that. So there's only one detective coming in at that range. Everyone else is being paid according to whatever Mr. McClure and Mr. Miller negotiate with regard to the association without my input. This is the only detective position that I have any authority or control over with regard to compensation. So it won't happen again.
Simply looking after taxpayer money in the future.
And I appreciate that, and I have no problem with that. Absolutely no problem, and I am too. I want to remain consistent with my budget and not come to you to ask you for money. I'm not going to do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Brown. Oh, I'm sorry, you're waving. I'm like a school teacher. I'm sorry. My apology.
Yeah, just to follow up to Mr. Warren's comments, I think the right time to really dig into your concerns, Mr. Warren, would be come October as we're going through the 2025 budget discussions. And that's when DA and all the other department heads have to come forth. And that's when we have the control, so to speak, to the DA's comments over the purse strings. So that would really be where you can really dig in and get some of those questions answered that I think you're looking for.
I appreciate that, Mr. Brown, and I'll, of course, be prepared to discuss anything council wants to. But if any of you have any concerns at any time, I will make myself available. I'm not afraid to answer questions or talk about issues.
Madam President, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question.
Go ahead.
So does this position get a pension?
It's a county position, yes. It's a full-time county position. It's exempt, though.
So, with these scales, and I get, in my profession, we also have steps. We can negotiate a higher step when we get hired, but, I don't understand why we aren't hiring at step one.
$61,000, I would have never gotten him, that's why.
Okay, but
That's
just,
simple.
and so
So it's my management position, he's part of management, and I have the ability to negotiate a salary.
Okay.
That's what happened.
Okay.
Mr. Heckman?
I have no question about how you run your office.
Well, if you do, that's fine.
No, I'll go on the record. No, I don't. I just want, this is all now worked out with the bargaining unit because he's not part of it. So all of that discussion is mute at this.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard. I followed the meeting, but on that phone, our communication device, I think the batteries are low because it was very hard to hear. But anyway, so we're clear on that. That's
Yes.
out of the picture. Thank
Yes.
you.
Any other questions from
Yeah, I have a
Mr. Braun?
question.
Yes.
So, it's mostly a question for the staff here. When we get a resolution to create a position, traditionally, it always has the entire package of what it costs to create this position. This isn't for you, Mr., I know it's in your budget and whole thing.
Yeah.
Every time, when I was here before, if there was a position created, it said 77,403, then it had the benefits, it had the cost, it had everything, and I know you have it.
Well,
It
no,
has
no, no.
everything built into there, and this is for my staff. And I'd like to see that from now on. I want to know what the total cost of the position is per year, year per year. And that's what we had all the time. And I don't know where it stopped, and it could have stopped, you know, things fall through the ether. We had COVID and the whole world turned upside down for 2 years and everything got weird. But, you know, it could have been that, but there should be the whole salary in here for us.
In defense of the staff, I believe that it was supposed to be presented at the last personnel meeting a few weeks ago, and it was pulled because it was still in HR, and it wasn't presented to us.
Right.
And
it
so you
wasn't
are
presented to us
correct.
Because it was an end around. It's an end around of the collective bargaining agreement. He's hiring a person on staff, which is fine. You're allowed. I don't need you to tell me about it.
No.
He's allowed to hire somebody as his full-time chief county detective, which is fine. And I guess all the detectives need supervision because they've never had it for the last 30 years.
Well, that's
Now
not
they
true,
need it.
Mr.
So,
Kraft.
which is, it's fine. It's your.
Well,
listen,
I'm not
you're
creating a new
independent.
position.
You're independent.
You already approved a chief county detective, and Jerry Walsh was that position. He was
Okay.
terminated, and I didn't replace him. So I'm not creating a new position, I'm filling a position.
You're just filling a position.
Yes.
It says it's hereby resolved by Northampton County Council that the position of one full-time county, okay. So, back to us, I'd like to see the whole scale. It should be on there, it was always on there, and now it's not on there. That's just for my own personal. I'm gonna support this position for you, so you know, I'm your biggest supporter here on.
Mr. Kraft, I appreciate it, and
know.
please know, before the last meeting, I gave my information to Human Resources, and on Friday, I delivered my information to Human
We
Resources.
were supposed to go to breakfast and talk about collective bargaining agreements, and we never.
But it got solved by Mr. Miller.
I know.
And I accepted his,
busting your chops.
I know, but I'm just saying
All
that.
right, so I'm supporting you, I'm supporting this, but
I
I just would
appreciate
like
it.
to see that from now on our, any position that's coming up, I want the whole thing on there. Sure.
Oh, Ken, I agree. I remember we'd get the sheet and it would say this much,
Right.
this, but you want to see an entire pay scale attached to?
Oh, no, I just want to see, you know, the pay, the benefits, and
Yeah.
what the whole total
All right.
package costs.
Okay, no, I
That-
know what you're talking about.
That's what we used to see. And personnel would have it, personnel committee would get it, and we go over it and the whole thing. You submitted them to us a million
still-
times.
As a matter of process, I just curious, in HR, typically the one providing that entire package in support of the director's request.
So I just want to see the whole.
Right, no, we've had it before, I mean, even recently, but just as a matter of process,
Yes.
if you would comment on that.
I can't do that. I give the information, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Snuck up on me.
Sorry, the district attorney and I had a meeting. He said at the last council meeting, President Vargo Hefner said that he should just take things straight to council. So he informed me that he would not be
let's
going through
clarify.
HR.
Let's
Well,
clarify.
I'm just saying, that's what the district attorney,
Let me publicly clarify that in the future, if he's going to be making proposals like this, that he should also inform the council clerk so that we know that they're coming. That does not mean that he should circumvent the process that exists, but that it was given to HR, it was never told to her, it was never told to us, that he should also inform her that he's going to be able to do something, so that we're clear publicly what I meant. Thank you. You can still do your job. No one's taking it from you.
Well, the district attorney said he was bringing it right to council, so I was respecting what he said.
That's fine, but I did deliver it to your office also on Friday. I gave it to council on Friday and to you on Friday. So I didn't try to eliminate you, or I didn't hide that information from you.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else have a comment or question for either entity?
I'm no longer confused.
Thank you. Let's call for the vote.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Mr. Gafredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mrs. Keegan.
No.
Mr. Kraft.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kapora.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 8-1.
Thank you. Next, we have the consideration of a local share agreement grant for Arts Quest. Mr. Gafredo, will you introduce?
All right. Where is the pay scale?
Just make sure I'm looking at the right one here. Whereas Northampton County Council does hereby support requests for both the Monroe County Local Share Account Grant and Northampton and Lehigh County's Local Share Account Grant from the Commonwealth Financing Authority on behalf of Arts Quest to support construction of a new cultural center to be built on the site of the current Banana Factory Arts Center, Bethlehem, Northampton County, PA. Whereas the Northampton County Department of Community and Economic Development has prepared all the documentation necessary to submit the request for this funding. And now, therefore, it be resolved, the Council of Northampton County does hereby designate the county executive to execute all documents and agreements between the County of Northampton and the Commonwealth Financing Authority to facilitate and assist in obtaining the requested grant.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Ms. Hilgert's here to answer any.
Great project.
No questions? Call for the vote.
Mr. Gafredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Ms. Keegan.
Yes.
Mr. Kraft.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kapora.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we have the consideration of funding through hotel room rental tax, historic Bethlehem Museum, and sites resolution. Mr. Gafredo?
I'm going to pick it up from the, now therefore it be resolved by the Council of the County of Northampton, the requested $100,000 to support the continuation of historic Moravian Bethlehem World Heritage Initiative to market the World Heritage designation is approved by Northampton County Council. Number 2, the county executive of the County of Northampton is authorized to execute a grant agreement with the applicant not to exceed the approved amount. Number 3, hotel room rental tax 2005 funds shall be utilized to support the grant.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Where's Bruce?
This isn't for Hotel Bethlehem. We're using the
Historic
tax money.
Bethlehem?
Yeah, but he's always here. Anything with historic Bethlehem, he's here. every
So
time,
essentially,
You know, I kind of miss him. you
they
know?
came to the Economic Development Committee
Right.
meeting. Moravian got approved as a World
Yeah, I
Heritage
saw,
Site.
it was great.
Yeah, huge deal. And now they need more funding to basically plan the ceremony for the, everybody's going to come to
Yeah, I'm
Bethlehem.
for it all. I just missed.
You like the bus
Bruce.
balls.
He's always here. So, all right, thank you.
Mr. Heckman?
Just for you, whatever committee you have, I'm going to request Bruce to come and address your committee in lieu of the entire council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Call for the vote.
Mr. Gafredo.
Yes.
Mr. Heckman.
Yes.
Mrs. Keegan.
Yes.
Mr. Kraft.
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Mr. Kapora.
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we have consideration of resolution approving consolidated plan for fiscal years 2024-28 and annual action plan for fiscal year 2024. Mr. Gafredo.
Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the County of Northampton, 1, that the fiscal year 24-28 consolidated plan, fiscal year 24 annual action plan, and the analysis of the impediments of fair housing choice are hereby approved. And number 2, that the county is fully informed of the conditions that are required in the undertaking and carrying out of housing community development activities with federal financial assistance. And number 3, that the county executive is authorized to execute and file the financial assistance application forms with HUD, which has indicated its willingness to make available funds to carry out the CDBG program in the amount of $2,248,134. The home program funding in the amount of $654,787. ESG program funding in the amount of $188,604, and is further authorized to act as the authorized representative of the County of Northampton to sign any and all documents in regard to these programs. And number 4, that the county executive is hereby authorized to provide assurances and/or certifications as required by HUD, and also provide any additional documents that may be requested.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yes.
In reading of the resolution, bullet point 3, the description has it as $2,048,134, and the number is $132. So there's a discrepancy between the two. Just which one is it?
It's a difference of $2. Do you happen to know the right amount of money? Yeah.
Well,
You're out of order.
It's just a matter of being clear, that's all. Not money.
That was 0.
132 is the correct amount?
So do we need to amend or?
We should amend it, we should give the proper number and then consider amendment so that it's correct. This is a federally funded program. I think we need more right.
So motion?
I'd like to make an amendment that it says in the writing, because the numbers are right, that it reflects 132.
I second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote.
On the amendment.
Hey, come on.
Mr. Kraft,
Yes.
Mr. Heckman,
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni,
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo,
Yes.
Mrs. Keegan,
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
Yes.
Mr. Warren,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Caporo.
Yes.
Passes with a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the amended resolution? If not, call for the vote. Is there, Mr. Here we go. Call for the vote.
Mr. Gofredo,
Yes.
Mr. Kraft,
Yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner,
Yes.
Mr. Warren,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Caporo,
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni,
Yes.
Mr. Heckman,
Yes.
Mrs. Keegan.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Next, we have a consideration of health, safety, and welfare bond for Lafayette College resolution. Mr. Heckman, will you introduce?
Sure. And spring that stuff on me here. Which one is it? Is this the one? The next one?
Yep.
All right. Resolution declaring that it is desirable for the health, safety, and welfare of the residents of the County of Northampton for the Northampton County General Purpose Authority to undertake a project for Lafayette College, approving the authority's issuance of bonds for the project as required under Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended, and repealing all prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions. Oh, my goodness. All right.
It's a long one.
Now therefore be it resolved by the Northampton County Council as follows. Section 1, it is hereby determined and declared pursuant to the Authorities Act that it is desirable for the health, safety, and welfare of the people in the area served by the college for the authority to undertake the financing of the project through the issuance of bonds in one or more series and issues at fixed rates of interest in an aggregate principal not to exceed $35 million. Section 2, the issuance not to exceed $35 million in aggregate principal amount of the bonds and the financing of the project are hereby approved for the purpose of Section 147F of the Code, subject to the approval of the issuance of the bonds by the county executive and delivery by said county executive of a certificate of approval in substantially the form attached hereto as Exhibit B and presented to the Northampton County Council the day following the necessary hearing concerning the project and the bonds, with such changes as the county executive shall deem appropriate, and the clerk of county council is hereby directed to attest her signature, the execution of such certificate to be conclusive evidence of the approval by the county executive of the issuance of the bonds and the project. Section 3, the foregoing determination, declaration, and approval are for the purposes of the applicable provisions of the approval for any permit, license, or zoning required for the construction or occupancy of any facilities to be financed or refinanced as part of the project. Section 4, the credit of the County of Northampton is not to be used for the security of the bonds, and the County of Northampton will have no liability for any payment of principal, of premium, if any, and interest on the bonds. Section 5, all actions of the Northampton County Council taken in conformity with the intents and purposes of this resolution are ratified, confirmed, and approved in all respects. Section 6, this resolution shall take effect immediately. All prior ordinances or resolutions or portions thereof inconsistent herewith are hereby repealed. That's it.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on this matter?
Mr. Vargo Hefner and I had this in the Jeep General Purpose Authority, and I believe it was unanimous vote for this. So I recommend everybody it's a pass-through bond, and we do these all the time.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Call for the vote.
Mr. Heckman,
Yes.
Mrs. Keegan,
Yes.
Mr. Kraft,
Yes?
Ms. Vargo Hefner,
Yes.
Mr. Warren,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Mr. Capora,
Yes.
Mr. Giovanni,
Yes.
Mr. Gofredo.
Yes.
Adopted by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you. Is there any other new business to discuss? Mr. Warren?
Madam President, thank you. At the Economic Development Committee meeting, we had some great presentations, and one of those presentations was from Lehigh Valley 250. And it was said during that meeting that there should have potentially been a resolution asking for $100,000 on this. Is there any way we could possibly get that on the next agenda?
I have some
So-
questions that I need to ask of the administration, and as soon as I get them answered, I'm happy to put it back on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And
I could not be at the meeting tonight, so that's why I pulled it.
there
'cause
seemed to
I-
be a little bit of shock as to why, not shock necessarily, but why
Shouldn't be
there
shock, it's
wasn't
just a matter
an
of,
issue.
it's not
Okay.
on tonight, that's
Okay,
all.
okay. Yeah, hoping it could be on for the next agenda if possible. Thank you.
Any other questions? New business? Any committee reports?
We had Economic Development Committee, as Mr. Warren just said. Full committee, we had only one thing not brought onto the agenda, as Mr. Warren spoke, but we will have soon the Lehigh Valley 250. Everything else we voted on here tonight.
Thank you. Human Services?
Yeah, we had a meeting tonight. No action was proposed, nor was any taken. I would suggest to folks that you want to check the meeting minutes. There was a lot of good information presented on Graysdale, and we spotlighted aging. I thought there was a lot of good information there. And also children, youth, and families, we discussed at a bit of length. And so I would just say that rather than belabor anything, I would say check the minutes when they come. And if you have any questions, be happy to address them at the next meeting, or you can address them to Ms. Wondolowski. That's it, Madam President.
Thank you. Any council liaison reports?
Yeah, I had it was a prison board meeting. I think the director's doing a fine job. The new director's fitting in pretty well. Everything seems to be running there smoothly. The only thing that's going on is the FCC or whoever passed a law that the billing of the tablets is not allowed anymore. We did this similar thing years ago to the phone billing system, and they took that away. Now they're taking the tablet billing away. You can't charge an inmate for using the tablet, so I don't know if we're gonna have them there very long. They use them for video visits and everything, but if you can't, you know, there's no way to support, they break them every day. They don't charge them, they don't break them. They take them out, they use them until they brick. When they run out of power, they're bricked. They have to be sent away and fixed. So every one of the tiers is like off of, 5 tablets, 6 tablets. They're missing all these tablets all the time because they do it themselves, no matter what you do there. But it's a whole company that does that for us. And if they have no way to make money having these tablets here, I can't see a future for tablets in the jails around the country with this new ruling. They'll be gone.
Does every prison charge? Or
Everybody charges,
every other
yes.
jail or
State-
prison system?
State, county,
So
everybody.
everybody's getting that pulled then if it's an FCC?
In the foreseeable future, I can see it because if there's no way to sustain, I mean, they cost a lot of money. They're, and they're prison proof, so you can't take them apart and use the parts for things. It's not a, it's not just like a tablet like you and I have. They have a whole infrastructure. It's an intranet, not an internet. They can't get out, but they have all kind of education. When you're sitting there all day long with nothing to do, you could read a book on it or anything, and they would charge you for the book or a movie or whatever that was sanitized. You couldn't watch those kind of movies.
Well, I get looked at.
And now they can't charge for that kind of stuff. So I just saw you look like that, so I know where you're going, Mr. Heckman. So it's just something to think about in the future. They may be gone, and that would be nationwide with what they passed. So, but besides that,
I have a question.
what's that?
Yes, Mr. Heckman.
I mean, that was very informative, and so they have to use their account, though, right, to pay to use, or if they want to get a book or something, was that included, or did they have to pay from their account?
Right, they would have an account, and you would log on to with your PIN, and you could get a book, or, get music, or listen to, or watch a movie, watch Scooby-Doo, whatever you do. They had all different kind of things. They had education all the way up to doctorate degrees, applied physics, mathematics. You could go on and do anything, but now that'll all be.
You always come and give us, like, this insight to the prison we didn't get. I wish you were still in prison. Because you were very clear and gave us all the knowledge we needed, and hopefully the new person can do the same.
Thank you.
The
So
record should reflect that was an endearment and a compliment. And
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I didn't mean you should go to prison for anything bad. I just wish you'd go to
I'll give him a hug
prison.
later. I know what he meant. All right. That's all for the prison.
That's hysterical. Any other liaisons to report? Any council clerk report?
No report.
Any solicitor report?
No.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? All in favor? Adjourn.
Chicago said they're not going to start any of their startups.
You know what he's getting.
I know, so I mean.
He doesn't.
Just open for 6 months too.
Yeah, I know
But I think